Okay, so another sort of famous one is Milgram's obedience experiment. So the experiment with this, again, quite unethical as well, is that people were put in an electric chair, and the participant was given a remote and basically told to electrocute them. Um, so the idea is that there was someone in the room and they told them, electric, I think it was like if they got a question wrong, I don't know, something like that. But anyway, however it happened, the sort of experimenter or the person in the room told them, okay, electrocute this person at like, I don't know, maybe like 10 volts or something. And then every time they would get it wrong, a little bit higher, and then a little bit higher, and a little bit higher. So the results of this was that, 300 volts, like we're not talking about, a little amount of electricity here. All of the participants, all of them went up to 300 volts. So, obviously they were instructed to shock these people and they all obeyed them. 65%, so again, the majority went all the way to 450 as well. So obviously some people, said no by then, but the majority of them said yes. And it's this idea of obedience, and how they were all influenced to obey this individual even when they knew what they were doing was probably not correct. They wouldn't have done that anyway. If you went to someone in the street and told them, give this person a shock of 450 volts because they got a question wrong, you'd say, oh, no way, I would never do that. But in this sort of environment, it was done. And so this idea, the ideas or the influences that we look at are social proximity, legitimacy of authority, and group pressure. So social proximity, this idea of how close the person instructing you to do something is, and also how close perhaps in this situation the other person was to them. But it's this idea of how, close the person instructing you is. So in this experiment, the individual was in the room when they would tell them to electrocute them, or, if we think about it in a real life setting, maybe it's this idea of how close you are to a certain teacher, your relationship with the person who's instructing you to do something that can sort of influence how obedient you are to them or how likely you are to obey their instructions. Legitimacy of authority. So the people knew they were entering an experiment, and the idea that this person was telling them, electrocute this person, it's this idea that they're running the experiment. They're obviously, a professional in this field, and like, I'm just a little participant, like I don't really know. So then they were more inclined to obviously say yes. If it was like a little boy on the street who came in and was like, oh, shock this person, that's obviously not, they'd be less inclined to do that. But the idea that this person seemed to be, quite legitimate, they seemed to have this authority. And because they're running the experiment, it's like, oh, okay, I better obey what they say. I'm in the experiment, right? And then this idea of group pressure. So again, if you know that a lot of other people electrocuted this person, if you have multiple people trying to instruct you to do something, again, you're going to be more inclined to do that. So in terms of the ethics, there are a lot of things that were breached. Obviously, psychological distress for causing, that feeling of inflicting pain upon someone. Again, withdrawal rights and beneficence, and deception in this idea that they weren't told these sort of like objectives of the experiment.